In a small, rural village, where a winding red dirt road leads through lush green rice fields and the sound of birdsong mingles with the crowing of roosters at dawn, there lives a family in a small house beside a dry ditch. It is a patchwork family. The husband has children from a previous marriage, and the wife also brought her own daughter from her former union. Life seemed peaceful, but inside that house, there were wary glances, silent sighs, and invisible distances that were not easy to bridge. Amidst the daily worries, would love be enough to mend two pieces that had once been broken? At 19, Yuen should have been like any other girl, still sitting in school, nurturing dreams for a brighter future. But fate did not give her the right to choose. From the day her parents separated, then her mother remarried, Yuen's life took a different turn. She followed her mother to her new husband's house, where there was a stepfather and a younger half-brother. From then on, Yuen seemed to live quietly in their shadow. Quiet, rarely smiling, and always yielding to avoid conflict in a house that did not truly belong to her. Time passed gently, like the shallow ditch in front of the house that flowed slowly with the seasons. The little girl had now become a beautiful young woman, slender, with a gentle face and eyes that were slightly sad, but deep. Yuen's life seemed to be flowing peacefully, until one day, fate knocked on her door, bringing her a turning point that even she herself did not expect. That morning, the countryside sky was crystal clear, sunlight filtering through the palm leaves, casting sparkling spots of light onto the yard. Yuen slung her bamboo basket over her shoulder and stepped out into the garden as usual, to pick fruit to take to the market to help her mother. The papaya trees in the garden were heavy with fruit, each ripe yellow fruit gently picked by her, wiped clean, and carefully placed in the basket. Beside them were several loquat trees, heavy with fruit, their sweet fragrance wafting in the breeze and filling her heart with an unusual sense of peace. Before long, the basket on Yuen's back was full. She gently wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled at the fruits of her familiar morning labor. Outside, the small dirt road leading to the market was bathed in sunlight. Yuen had no idea that this trip to the market that day would be the last peaceful moment of her life. The rural market gradually appeared before Yuen's eyes, noisy yet familiar. The sounds of buyers and sellers echoed cheerfully, blending with the sounds of knives and cutting boards, scales and calls of invitation, all creating a lively symphony of life and livelihood. On both sides of the narrow dirt road, stalls lined up side by side, selling vegetables, fish, flowers, and local delicacies. All of it wove together a vibrant, simple, and deeply cherished picture of the countryside. Amidst the bustling crowd, the image of a 19-year-old girl with a bamboo basket full of fruits and vegetables stands out in the market like a pure stroke in a painting of life. With a kind face and hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck, each step Yuen takes carries a sense of gentleness and shyness, yet still exudes charm. Since she only sells retail, Yuen chose a small corner, just enough to place her bamboo basket and display the papayas and guavas she picked that morning. She gently wiped each fruit, arranged them neatly, then smiled to welcome her first customers. The early morning sunlight filtered through the market corner, illuminating her face and making her eyes sparkle with a small hope that she would sell everything quickly today, so she could return home to her mother early. Passers-by, perhaps drawn not only by the fresh, delicious fruits, but also by the gentle smile and soft voice of the country girl, stopped to ask questions, make purchases, and offer compliments like, "What a good girl," and "Your fruits are so fresh." Each word warmed Yuen's heart, which had endured so much. From the first customer to the last, every papaya and every guava was sold. When the bamboo basket was empty, Yuen's face lit up with simple joy. She quickly tidied up, folded the bamboo tray, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and smiled softly. It seemed that this small happiness was enough to make her day truly beautiful. On the way home, the sun was high in the sky, Win carried the empty basket on her shoulder, her heart light. She did not know that fate was quietly preparing a new chapter for her. After selling all the fruit baskets at the market, Win returned home with a small joy. As soon as she placed the basket on the porch, she carried the bamboo basket out to the garden, her deft hands picking each bunch of fresh green vegetables, still covered in morning dew. The scent of earth, vegetables, and sunshine mingled together, so familiar that it made her heart feel light. She knew that no matter how difficult life was, as long as she could share a simple meal with her mother, everything would feel warm. In the small kitchen, Win quickly lit the stove, smoke curling around her hair. She was busy cutting vegetables when her mother's voice echoed down from upstairs, urgent and somewhat worried. "Win, hurry up. Father said to call you." Hearing this, she quickly wiped her hands and hurried upstairs. But as she approached the living room window, her feet suddenly froze. From inside, her stepfather's voice rang out loud and clear, his tone domineering, and her name was in it. Win quietly pressed herself against the door, her heart pounding. Through the crack in the wood, she could hear every word. He was discussing with her mother the matter of marrying her off to Bin, the man from the village above, a man who had been married before, notorious for being rude and violent, even beating his own relatives. Win froze. She couldn't believe her ears. Her mother's voice also rang out, trembling yet resolute. "No, father, she's still too young. Besides, Bin is hot-tempered. I can't let my daughter suffer again." But her stepfather slammed his hand on the table, his voice harsh. "I've told you, my son left behind a huge debt. No one will help. The only way to settle things is to marry Uyen to Bin. Don't stop me anymore." Uyen stood frozen behind the door, tears streaming down her face without her realizing it. Each word he spoke cut deep into her heart. She understood now. She was just a bargaining chip, a commodity in the hands of the man her mother had placed her trust in wrongly. At that moment, her mother called out loudly, "Uyen, where are you? Come up here." With no other choice, Uyen stepped inside and stood timidly beside her mother. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Her stepfather turned to look at her, his voice suddenly unusually gentle, unlike before. "I only want what's best for you. Bin is a man of means. He can provide you with a comfortable life, free from hardship. You should listen to me. Don't be stubborn." Uyen bowed her head, her hands clasped tightly together. She had heard everything, but his voice was so fake it hurt. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, then said softly, "Yes, I'm still young. I don't want to get married yet, father. I just want to stay with mother." The air seemed to freeze. Her stepfather stared at her, his eyes flashing with suppressed anger. He tried to lower his voice again, but when Uyen still refused, his tone suddenly became harsh. "Later, this house feeds you and pays for your education, and now you dare to argue? If you don't agree, your mother will make you obey." Uyen's mother sat beside her, her face pale. On one side was her husband, on the other her daughter, both her flesh and blood, an inseparable bond. She could only look at Uyen, her eyes brimming with tears. In front of her husband, she suppressed her sobs, holding her daughter's hand tremulously. "Uyen, listen to your father. Who knows, maybe later. Things will be better." Uyen choked back tears, her tears falling freely. She shook her head, her voice hoarse. "Mom, I can't. I don't want to." Her stepfather's voice rang out again, full of anger. "You stubborn girl, don't you listen to me?" He jumped up, knocking over chairs and tables. In his rage, he raised his hand to slap Uyen, to assert his power, his sense of authority, which he believed was discipline. But Uyen's mother quickly stepped between them to stop him. The air in the small house seemed to shatter. The stepfather stood glaring, breathing heavily, while Uyen's mother tried to hold back her tears. To prevent things from getting worse, she gently pushed Uyen back into the small room, then stepped forward herself, standing in front of her husband like a weak but instinctive shield of a mother. "Calm down. She's still young. I beg you not to pressure her anymore." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were unusually determined. The stepfather pointed angrily at her face, his voice hissing through clenched teeth. If you can't persuade him, then both you and him get out of this house." The words exploded like thunder in the clear sky. Just a moment ago, the house had been filled with laughter, but now there were only threats, pressure, and fear. The door burst open and Ka, the stepfather's biological son, walked in. His face showed impatience. As soon as he saw Yuan, he rushed over, sat opposite her, his voice tinged with falseness and calculation. "Yuan, your father and I have already arranged this marriage. Bin is a wealthy man. If you marry him, you won't have to worry about anything anymore. Just listen to us, and don't make things difficult for my father." Yuan lowered her head, her voice choked but firm. "I can't. I don't want to marry someone like Bin." Ka's face darkened. His fake smile disappeared, revealing his true nature as a selfish person. He gritted his teeth, each word cutting like a knife. "I owe them. You have to marry Bin to settle the debt. It's the only option. Do you understand?" Yuan raised her head, her eyes brimming with tears, but also filled with resentment. "No one has the right to sell me like a piece of merchandise." Faced with her resistance, Ka slammed his hand down on the table. His face flushed red with anger. He stormed out, leaving the house heavy with tension. Outside, dusk had fallen, the last rays of sunlight falling on the old tiled roof, dragging along a long sadness like the rustling of the wind. The next morning, the whole family gathered again at the wooden table in the front yard. Everyone's faces were tense. Stepfather and Ka kept bringing up the topic of marrying off Win. The debt was due, making them more impatient and determined. Win's mother remained silent, her hands clenched so tightly they bled. But she couldn't say anything more. Win was sweeping the yard at the time, pretending not to hear. Suddenly, Ka deliberately threw a handful of trash right where she was sweeping, his eyes filled with hatred, as if venting all his anger. Stepfather saw this, but only said a few perfunctory words, not bothering to intervene. Win understood clearly. Father and son were of the same mind, sharing the same scheme. She remained silent, turned around, and walked to the back of the house. There, by the kitchen door, she sat down, her hands covering her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. She cried for her fate. A thought flashed through her mind. She had to find her lover, the only person she trusted, hoping he would help her escape this storm. She quietly left the house. Back home, her stepfather had planned to call Bin and lock Win up to force her into marriage, like a transaction. Not far away, Win's mother had heard their entire conversation and remained silent. At the coconut tree at the village entrance where the two had once dated, Win sat, hugging her pillows, her heart filled with anticipation and trembling. A moment later, the sound of a motorcycle echoed from afar. He arrived, the man she had once loved deeply. Win ran out, her eyes glowing with faint hope. She recounted everything, her voice choked with emotion, her hands clutching his tightly. "Help me. I don't want to be forced into marriage. I'm so scared." But his face was cold, his eyes avoiding hers. Then, the words Win heard left her speechless. "Your business has nothing to do with me anymore. I have my own life. Don't look for me anymore." Win was stunned, her voice trembling. "What are you saying? You promised you wouldn't abandon me." He smiled faintly, pulled her hands away, his voice cold as ice. "Don't follow me anymore, Win. I don't want to get involved in your troubles." Before she could say another word, he shoved her hard, sending her crashing to the ground, then revved the engine and sped off, leaving a trail of dust in the wind. Win collapsed, her hands clutching the grass, tears streaming down her face. She realized the person she trusted most had turned her back on her. Upon arriving home, her mother hurriedly pulled Win into the room, her voice choked with urgency. "You must flee immediately. Your stepfather has planned to lock you up tonight and force you to marry Bin." Time was running out. The sound of her stepfather's motorcycle echoed in the yard. Win quickly grabbed a few sets of clothes, slipped out the back of the house, and fled. Unsure where she was heading, but knowing she had to leave immediately. News of Wen's escape spread quickly. As night fell, everything gradually sank into silence. except for the sound of her stepfather and his son's motorbike roaring through the alleys, searching for her like madmen looking for a lost item. They sped through every street corner, weaving into every nook and cranny, determined not to miss a thing. As they approached the place where Wynne had been found, luckily, she managed to smile with relief. The father and son gave up the search and left in disappointment. Left behind, in the pitch-black night, Wynne huddled in a small corner of the deserted street, alone in the darkness.